Have you ever felt invisible even in your own family? Imagine living under the same roof with your parents, the people who raised you, and realizing that no matter how hard you try, you and your children will never measure up to the golden child of the family. What would you do? If your own kids were pushed aside, ignored, and treated like they didn't matter, would you stay silent? Or would you finally take a stand? Today I'm going to share the story of how one mother, after years of sacrifice, found the courage to walk away and protect her children from the people who were supposed to love them most. My name is Sarah Mitchell, I'm 35 years old, and I'm a mother to two beautiful 10-year-olds, Liam and Chloe. They're twins, but they couldn't be more different. Liam is my little artist, always sketching superheroes or building Lego cities, and Chloe is the athlete of the family, bold, outspoken, never afraid to call something unfair. They are my whole world. 2 years ago, life as I knew it fell apart. After 12 years of marriage, my husband Daniel and I divorced. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of the life we had built together. Daniel was a software engineer, the breadwinner, while I worked part-time as a pediatric nurse so I could balance my schedule around raising the twins. When the marriage ended, I was left with shared custody, minimal support, and the sudden need to work full-time just to keep us afloat. I can still remember the day I packed up the twins and drove to my parents' house. My father, George, met me at the door with a firm pat on the shoulder. "Just until you get back on your feet," he said. My mother, Linda, tried to smile warmly, though I could already sense the hesitation in her eyes. For a moment I thought maybe this was a blessing. I would have childcare support while I pulled long shifts at the hospital. The twins would have stability while I figured out how to rebuild. But what I didn't know then was that this temporary solution would turn into the biggest test of my life. Growing up, my relationship with my parents had never been easy. I was the responsible child, the one who followed the rules, who got good grades, who kept the peace. My younger brother, Brian, was the opposite. Reckless, charming, and somehow always forgiven. To my parents, he could do no wrong. I spent 8 years grinding through nursing school because I loved working with children, even though it wasn't glamorous or high-paying. Meanwhile, Brian dropped out of college, convinced my parents to fund his tech startup, and somehow turned it into a 6-figure business. To them, he was a success story. To me, he was still the same boy who never had to earn anything. I thought I had grown numb to the favoritism over the years. But moving back into their home brought all of it flooding back. First, though, things seemed okay. My parents turned their small home office into a bedroom for Liam and Chloe, and I took the guest room. I tried to contribute as much as I could, buying groceries, doing most of the cooking, making sure my kids were respectful. I told myself this was temporary. I saved every extra dollar I could, scribbling numbers on a chart taped inside my bathroom cabinet. If I stayed disciplined, I could afford a deposit for a small 2-bedroom by Christmas. Life fell into a rhythm. I worked 12-hour shifts at the children's hospital, often overnight, and my parents helped with school drop-offs and pickups when I couldn't. It wasn't perfect, but I kept reminding myself it was only for a little while. Then came the shift that changed everything. My brother Brian and his wife Jessica had their first child, a baby boy named Noah. My parents had always favored Brian, but the arrival of their grandson turned that favoritism into something much bigger. They transformed the formal dining room into a nursery for Noah. Even though Brian and Jessica owned a 4-bedroom house across town, they bought brand new cribs, strollers, and toys that Noah would only use during visits. My mother started canceling plans to watch my kids whenever Brian needed help. "Your brother is new to parenting, Sarah," she would say. "He needs more support right now." The irony hit me hard. I had been parenting alone for 2 years. Where was that kind of support when I needed it? First, I tried to be understanding. New babies are exciting. Noah was their first grandson after all. I told Liam and Chloe to be patient. That little babies need a lot of attention. But the favoritism started small. And then it grew. At Christmas, Noah's presents were more expensive, more thoughtful, while my kids received things that felt like afterthoughts. My parents would gush about how Noah looked just like Brian had as a baby, while reminding me that Liam and Chloe took after their father, not me. It was subtle, but I saw the way Liam's smile faltered when his artwork went unnoticed, or how Chloe clenched her jaw when she was told to be more understanding, because Noah was just a baby. To protect them, I started creating our own little traditions. On my days off, we went to the park or had movie nights in my room. We'd color in the savings chart together, each dollar bringing us closer to our own home. Just a few more months, I would whisper to them. By Christmas, we'll have our own place again. But as spring turned into summer, things inside the house started to crack. My parents became more critical of everything I did. How I fed the kids, how late they stayed up, how much screen time they had. Meanwhile, Brian and Jessica could do no wrong. They could cancel family dinners at the last minute, show up late, even act entitled, and my parents defended them every time. It was like walking a tightrope. I needed their help with childcare, but every day I worried more about the message my kids were receiving, that their cousin mattered more, that their voices didn't count. By the end of summer, I had almost saved enough for our own apartment. Just 3 more months, I told myself. 3 more months of biting my tongue. 3 more months of holding my kids close and reminding them that they were loved. But I didn't know then that the real storm was just around the corner. Sometimes life doesn't fall apart all at once. It unravels slowly, piece by piece, until suddenly you realize you're standing in the middle of ruins. That's exactly what happened the day my brother Brian and his wife Jessica came over with their baby Noah. All smiles, carrying news that would turn our already fragile living arrangement into a nightmare. It was early September when Brian called for a family meeting. We all gathered in my parents' kitchen, me, the twins, my mom and dad, and Brian and Jessica with baby Noah perched on Jessica's lap, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. Brian's eyes sparkled with excitement as he made his announcement. "We're finally doing the big renovation on our house," he said proudly. "The one we've been planning for years. It's going to be massive, new kitchen, an extra bathroom, the works." My mother gasped in delight, clasping her hands together. "Oh, Brian, that's wonderful news." Jessica smiled sweetly, bouncing Noah on her knee. "The only thing is," she continued, "we'll need somewhere to stay while the work is being done. Probably 6 to 8 weeks, maybe a little longer." Before I could even process the words, my dad jumped in. "Of course you'll stay here. We've got plenty of room." My stomach dropped. Plenty of room? We already had 5 people under this roof and space was tight as it was. I cleared my throat, my voice cautious. "Actually, it's already a little cramped with me and the twins here. Maybe we should talk about." But before I could finish, my mom cut me off with a sharp look. "Family helps family, Sarah. It's only temporary." And just like that, the decision was made. My voice, my children's needs didn't matter. The golden child had spoken, and the red carpet was rolled out. Brian and Jessica moved in the very next weekend. My father helped them set up a portable crib in their room. My mother cleared out an entire closet for Jessica's clothes. I couldn't help but notice the contrast. When the twins and I had moved in, my belongings sat in suitcases for months until I finally bought myself a small dresser. No one had rushed to make us comfortable. From the very beginning, the changes were impossible to ignore. Suddenly, Liam and Chloe were told to keep their voices down at all hours because Noah is napping. Their toys, which had been neatly contained in their bedroom in one corner of the living room, were now packed away because Jessica thought they made the space look cluttered. The television, which my kids were allowed to watch for 1 hour after school, was now permanently tuned to Jessica's shows. Even the dining table, once a place we shared as a family, was rearranged to accommodate Noah's high chair and Jessica's laptop. It was like our existence shrank overnight. One evening, after a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital, I came home to find Chloe sitting alone on the back porch, tears in her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, sinking down beside her. She sniffled, holding her jump rope in her hands. "Grandma said I was being too loud. She told me to stop playing in the yard." I frowned. "But wasn't Noah inside with Jessica?" Chloe nodded, frustration flashing across her little face. "He wasn't even sleeping, Mom. He was watching TV. She just didn't want me out there counting my jumps." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, my heart aching. Chloe was the type of kid who loved moving, loved testing herself, loved proving she could do one more jump than yesterday. To silence that spark felt cruel. The same week, Liam came home from school practically buzzing with excitement. He had been chosen to represent his class in an art exhibition, a huge honor for a boy who lived and breathed creativity. Clutching his sketchbook, he hurried to show my mother. "Grandma, look. My teacher picked me for the district showcase." But she barely glanced at the page. "Not now, Liam. I'm helping Jessica pick out curtains for their new living room." I saw it, the flicker in his eyes, the way his little shoulders drooped as he stepped back quietly. My son, desperate for acknowledgement, brushed aside like he didn't matter. Something inside me hardened that night. After I tucked the kids into bed, I tried to talk to my parents. I wanted to stay calm, to explain without sounding confrontational. I understand Brian and Jessica need help right now. I began, my voice careful. But I'm worried about how Liam and Chloe are feeling. They think they're not important anymore. My dad frowned, shaking his head. They're being oversensitive. Kids need to learn that babies require more attention. Noah is little. He's not even here most of the day. I pointed out that Noah was in daycare during the day, and my kids weren't asking for attention during those hours. They just wanted to be acknowledged when they were home. My mother sighed, her voice heavy with judgment. You've always been jealous of your brother, Sarah. I thought you'd outgrown that by now. Her words cut deep. Was that really how she saw me? Not as a mother protecting her children, but as a petty, jealous sibling? The weeks that followed were a test of patience I didn't know I had. Jessica began rearranging the kitchen cabinets without asking, complaining that my healthy snacks for the twins took up too much space. She would leave her laundry sitting in the washing machine for days, as if the rest of us didn't exist. Brian acted like he owned the house. He invited his friends over for football nights, crowding the living room with laughter and noise while my kids were told to stay out of the way. And all the while, my parents looked on with approval, blind to the damage it was doing to Liam and Chloe. The tipping point came one evening when I overheard Brian talking with my dad in the kitchen. The contractor found some issues with the foundation. Brian was saying casually, "We may need to extend the renovation a bit." "Stay as long as you need," my dad replied warmly. "This is your home too." I froze in the hallway, my chest tightening. Your home too. I had lived here nearly 2 years, paying for groceries, cooking meals, doing laundry, helping with chores. Yet I had never once been told this was my home. My parents never let me forget our stay was temporary. But for Brian, the rules were different. The breaking point wasn't far off. One Sunday, we sat down to dinner. My mom had cooked all of Brian's favorite foods: spicy ribs, garlic bread, mashed potatoes loaded with cheese. None of it was food Liam or Chloe liked, but I tried to encourage them to be polite. Halfway through the meal, Liam politely asked if there was anything else he could eat. My mom's face hardened. "When I was your age, we ate what was put in front of us. You're being ungrateful." Minutes later, Noah threw his entire plate on the floor. Everyone laughed indulgently. "He's just exploring his world," Jessica said with a smile, making no move to clean it up. I glanced at Liam. His voice was barely above a whisper when he leaned toward me. "How come Noah can throw food, but I can't even ask for a sandwich?" I had no answer. That night, when I found Liam's and Chloe's artwork removed from the refrigerator, replaced with Noah's daycare schedule and a dozen baby photos, I realized something. We weren't just being ignored anymore. We were being erased. You know how sometimes people tell you, you're just imagining it? That you're overreacting, or being too sensitive? That's what my parents said every time I tried to explain how Liam and Chloe were being pushed aside. But the truth is, kids know. They can feel when they're not wanted. And no matter how much you try to shield them, that kind of hurt seeps through. By early October, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where my kids were background extras in someone else's show. Everywhere I turned, I saw proof of it. Liam and Chloe's toys packed into boxes in the garage. Their drawings and school awards replaced with endless photos of baby Noah. Even their laughter, the kind that used to echo through the house, was quieter now. They had learned to shrink themselves. One evening, I came home from a night shift and found Chloe sitting cross-legged on her bed, her clarinet in its case beside her. "Did you practice today?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. She shook her head. "Aunt Jessica said I was too loud. She said she had an important work call." My stomach sank. Chloe's band teacher had been praising her progress, even saying she had real talent. Now she was falling behind, not because she lacked dedication, but because in this house her passion was treated as a nuisance. Liam wasn't doing any better. His teacher emailed me one afternoon, saying she was concerned about his sudden withdrawal. "He doesn't participate the way he used to," she wrote. "He seems anxious, like he's scared to make a mistake." When I asked him about it, he lowered his eyes. "Grandma and Grandpa get mad at us for everything," he whispered. "But they never get mad at Noah. It feels like we don't belong here." Those words broke me in a way nothing else had. The favoritism was no longer hidden. It was out in the open, bold and cruel. At Sunday dinner that week, my mom launched into her usual praise for Noah. "He's only 9 months and he's already trying to stand," she bragged. "Brian was an early walker too. Some children just have that natural athletic ability." Then she turned to Liam, her voice dipping into something almost pitying. "It's too bad you didn't get that from your father's side. David was always athletic, wasn't he, Sarah?" I saw Liam's face crumble before he forced himself into a blank expression. To him, the message was clear. Any good trait in him came from someone else. Nothing about him, nothing about me was ever enough. Across the table, my Aunt Susan caught my eye. Her lips pressed tightly together, her expression full of quiet outrage. After dinner, Aunt Susan pulled me aside. Her voice was low, urgent. "Sarah, how long has it been like this?" I swallowed hard. "Honestly, always. But it's gotten worse since Brian and Jessica moved in." Her hand squeezed mine. "This isn't healthy for you or the kids. They deserve better than to be treated like second-class members of the family." Her words echoed something my coworker Nancy had told me earlier that week. Nancy had noticed how stressed I was during a shift and asked if everything was okay at home. When I finally poured the story out, she listened quietly before saying, "It sounds like your brother's family are the honored guests, and you and your kids are treated like unwanted roommates." Hearing it from her, and then again from Aunt Susan, made something click inside me. It wasn't just me being too sensitive. It wasn't jealousy. Other people could see it too. For the first time, I stopped doubting myself. That night, I didn't drive straight home after work. Instead, I parked in a quiet lot near the hospital and called a realtor friend of mine. "I need to find a place," I told her. "Something small but safe. For me and the kids." She didn't hesitate. "Come by my office tomorrow. We'll start looking." It felt like the first step toward freedom, a secret lifeline I was building while everyone else in that house assumed I had no options. But life inside those walls kept pressing down on us. Brian and Jessica's renovation, originally supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks, stretched longer and longer. Every time I asked for an update, Brian was vague. "There were complications," he'd shrug. "It'll be a while." Meanwhile, my parents catered to their every need. They bought Noah a $400 high chair, while complaining about the price of Liam's asthma medication the week before. They excused every tantrum, every inconvenience, while nitpicking my children to exhaustion. When I questioned them, my mom's answer was simple. "Noah deserves the best. He's here all day while your kids are at school." The cruelty of that statement still makes my chest tighten. One afternoon, Chloe finally broke. She had been practicing her clarinet quietly in her room when Jessica stormed in. "Can you not do that right now?" she snapped. "Noah's trying to nap, and I have a call in 10 minutes. Chloe apologized, put her clarinet away, and later cried in my arms. "It was my scheduled practice time, Mom. I missed it. Now I'll be behind." I tried to reason with Jessica, suggesting we create a schedule that worked for everyone. She didn't budge. "My work calls and Noah's sleep schedule come first," she said flatly. "Chloe's little hobby can wait." Her little hobby. My daughter's dream. My daughter's gift. Reduced to nothing. That night, I worked another long shift at the hospital. When I got home, I found Liam and Chloe huddled together in their room, whispering. The moment they saw me, their eyes filled with tears of relief. "Mom," Chloe whispered, "please tell me we don't have to live here forever." I knelt beside them, pulling them both close. "No," I promised softly. "We won't be here forever. I'm working on it. Just hold on a little longer." And as I said it, I knew it wasn't just a comfort, it was a vow. From that point forward, everything I did was with one goal in mind: getting us out. On my lunch breaks, I scrolled through rental listings with my realtor. On my days off, I drove around neighborhoods, looking for rent signs. I set aside every extra dollar from overtime shifts, even if it meant skipping meals for myself. The savings chart taped inside my bathroom cabinet, the one Liam and Chloe loved to color in, was filling up faster now. Each mark on the paper was proof that freedom was coming. But in the meantime, the house became unbearable. Jessica continued treating me like an unwanted roommate. Brian acted like he was head of the household. And my parents, they doubled down on their favoritism. The twins no longer wanted to spend time in the living room or kitchen. They stayed in their small bedroom whenever they could, where at least they had a little bit of control. To give them relief, I started taking them to the public library after school. We'd sit together at a quiet table, reading or working on homework. Sometimes we'd just enjoy the silence. It was in those moments, watching my children relax for the first time all day, that I realized how bad things had gotten. One evening, after putting them to bed, I sat alone in the dark and whispered to myself, "This ends soon." I didn't know exactly when or exactly how, but I knew this much. I would not let my kids grow up believing they were less. We were going to leave, and we were never coming back the same. Some betrayals cut so deep, you don't recover from them. You don't argue, you don't try to explain yourself one more time, you just know. You know it's over. For me, that moment came one Tuesday afternoon, after a 12-hour hospital shift, when I discovered what my parents had done to my children behind my back. It had been one of the busiest days I could remember. 3 new admissions in pediatrics, a short-staffed floor, endless charting. My feet ached, my head pounded, but as always I kept going because kids needed me, because that's what I do. I barely checked my phone all day. During my quick lunch break, I pulled it out and saw several missed texts from Liam and Chloe. My heart sank. The first was from Liam. "Mom, something weird is happening. Grandpa and Uncle Brian are moving our stuff." Then from Chloe, "Grandma says we have to move to the basement. This isn't fair." Another from Liam, desperate now. "Mom, please come home. They took all our things downstairs." And Chloe, the last one, "I hate it here. The basement is cold and gross and there are spiders." I swear the world tilted beneath me. My hand shook as I dialed the house. No answer. I tried Liam's phone. No answer. Chloe's. Nothing. Finally, I texted her. "I'll be home as soon as I can. Stay calm. I love you both." I rushed to my supervisor, explaining there was a family emergency. She understood and found coverage for the rest of my shift. But even with her help, it took nearly an hour to hand off my patients and finish the required documentation. The drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. My mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. Had they really moved my kids into that damp, unfinished basement? The one with mold in the corner, the one that flooded when it rained too hard? By the time I pulled into the driveway, my pulse was thundering in my ears. I told myself to stay calm, to think clearly, because my children needed me steady. But when I stepped inside the house, the sight that greeted me nearly shattered my resolve. Liam and Chloe were curled together on the couch, their eyes red from crying. My mother and Jessica sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea as though nothing was unusual. My father and Brian were nowhere to be seen. I dropped my bag and rushed to my children. "What's going on?" I asked softly. Chloe launched herself into my arms. "They moved all our stuff to the basement without asking. They said we don't deserve the rooms upstairs." Liam nodded miserably. "Grandpa said Uncle Brian's family needs more space because they're more important right now." I hugged them both tightly, fighting to keep my voice calm. Inside, though, fury was rising like wildfire. I walked into the kitchen, my tone cold and direct. "Why are my children's belongings in the basement?" Jessica didn't even blink. "We needed to make some adjustments. Brian and I need a nursery for Noah, plus space for my home office. So we thought it made sense to move the twins downstairs." I stared at her in disbelief. "You decided to move my children without asking me first? Into an unfinished, unsafe basement." My mother finally looked up from her tea, her expression calm, too calm. It was the logical solution. The children are older, they can adapt more easily than a baby. Besides, Noah deserves the best rooms. He's here all day while your kids are at school. Her words knocked the air out of me. My children deserve less because they go to school? Because they're not Brian's? I wanted to scream, but my voice came out steady, quiet. "The basement has mold. It's cold, it's damp. The ceiling isn't finished. It's not safe. And Liam has asthma. Do you even realize what you've risked by doing this?" My mother waved a hand dismissively. "Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. Kids are resilient. They'll manage." Resilient. Manage. Words people use when they don't care about the damage they're causing. Just then, my father and Brian came in through the back door. My father's face brightened when he saw me. "Oh good, you're home. We've made some changes we need to talk about." I turned to face him, every nerve in my body thrumming with anger. "Yes, I can see that. You moved my children to the basement without my permission. Brian shrugged casually. We need the space upstairs. Noah's getting more mobile. He needs room to develop properly. And Jessica needs quiet for her calls. I clenched my jaw. And my children need a safe bedroom, not a damp, moldy basement. My father crossed his arms. The basement is fine. I put down some old carpet scraps and installed extra lights. They should be grateful they have a place at all. Something inside me broke in that moment. The man who raised me, the man whose approval I had chased my entire life, had just said my kids should be grateful for scraps. Dad, I said slowly, Liam has asthma. That basement could trigger an attack. Do you understand how dangerous that is? Brian rolled his eyes. You're overreacting as usual. Kids are tougher than you think. Jessica and I grew up with worse conditions, didn't we, honey? Jessica nodded, but I knew it wasn't true. She'd grown up in a wealthy suburb, in a 5-bedroom house with central air. They were all lying to themselves, rewriting reality to make their cruelty sound reasonable. I looked around at the 4 adults in front of me, my parents, my brother, his wife, and realized none of them felt remorse. None of them cared about what this was doing to Liam and Chloe. In their eyes, the golden child's family always came first. I turned back to the living room. My children were watching me, eyes wide with fear but also trust. Trust that I would fix this. And in that moment, everything inside me crystallized into certainty. I smiled at them, a real smile despite the rage coursing through me. Pack your bags, I told them softly. Just the important things for now. We'll get the rest later. They looked confused, but I nodded firmly. Trust me. My father followed me, his face red with anger. Oh, for heaven's sake, Sarah. Stop being dramatic. No one's asking you to leave. I turned to him calmly. No, Dad. You've made it abundantly clear where we stand in this family. And my children deserve better. He sputtered, caught off guard. What are you talking about? I ignored him, calling out to Liam and Chloe. Go on, kids. Pack your backpacks with your most important things. We'll come back for the rest tomorrow. My mother rushed into the living room, her face pinched with anger. What nonsense is this? You can't just leave because things didn't go your way. Jessica scoffed. It's just a bedroom rearrangement, Sarah. You're being ridiculous. I turned to her, my voice icy. Would you call it that if someone moved Noah into a damp, unsafe basement without telling you first? Her silence was answer enough. Brian smirked, shaking his head. Where do you even think you're going to go? You don't have the money for rent. You've been living off Mom and Dad this whole time. I met his gaze steadily. That's where you're wrong. I've been saving since the day I moved in, working extra shifts. And 3 weeks ago, I signed a lease on a house not far from here. The silence that followed was almost satisfying. My parents, Brian, Jessica, all of them stared at me in shock. My mother recovered first, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. You were planning to leave without telling us? I was planning to give you notice next week, I said calmly. The house isn't ready until November 1st. But after today, we're leaving now. At that moment, Liam and Chloe came down the stairs, backpacks slung over their shoulders, clutching their most precious belongings. Chloe with her clarinet case, Liam with his sketchbook and the stuffed dragon he'd slept with since he was 3. We're ready, Mom, Chloe said firmly, her voice stronger than I'd heard in weeks. I looked at them, pride swelling in my chest. Then let's go, I said. And with that, I walked out the door with my children, leaving the house that had never truly been ours. The night we left my parents' house, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not because everything was solved, but because for the first time I had taken a stand. I had told my children with my actions, not just my words, that they mattered. But of course, leaving wasn't the end. The next morning we had to go back. We had to face them again. And if last night was the storm, today was the aftermath. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of my friend Nancy's guest room. Liam and Chloe were still asleep, curled up on air mattresses beside me. For a moment I just lay there, listening to their soft breathing, letting the quiet soak in. No shouting, no criticism, no constant comparison to their cousin, just peace. But as much as I wanted to stay wrapped in that moment, I knew what had to be done. We had left most of our belongings behind. Clothes, books, toys, little pieces of our life. We couldn't abandon everything. So I told the kids gently, we're going back this morning to get our things. But remember what we talked about, we're doing this together. No fear, no shame. We're leaving because it's what's best for us. They both nodded, determination flickering in their tired eyes. When we pulled into my parents' driveway at 10 o'clock, my stomach twisted. I knew everyone would be home. I knew there'd be a scene. Sure enough, my father opened the door, his expression already stern. "Come to apologize for your tantrum?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I met his gaze evenly. "No, we came to get our things." His face hardened, but he stepped aside reluctantly. Inside, my mother sat on the couch, her eyes rimmed red. She had been crying, though I couldn't tell if it was from guilt or from anger that I dared to stand up to her. Brian and Jessica were nowhere in sight. My mom quickly explained. They took Noah to the park. They thought it would be less stressful if they weren't here. At least they had that much sense. I turned to the twins. "Go on upstairs, pack up what you need and love. We can replace the rest." They hurried off, their small footsteps echoing down the hall. My mother's voice broke the silence. "I can't believe you're doing this to us." I drew in a steady breath. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm doing something for my children. For myself. We gave you everything," she insisted. "A place to stay when you had nowhere. Help with the kids. Emotional support during your divorce." I nodded. And I was grateful. I still am. But none of that justifies treating my children as less valuable than Noah. Her eyes narrowed. "We never said that." "You didn't have to say it," I replied quietly. "Your actions made it clear." My father began pacing the living room, his voice rising. "This is about Brian, isn't it? You've always been jealous of him." I shook my head. "This isn't about Brian. This is about Liam and Chloe being moved to an unsafe basement without my knowledge or consent. This is about you saying out loud that Noah deserves better rooms simply because he's Brian's son. Do you understand how cruel that was?" My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're twisting our words." I stared at her. "Am I? You said, and I quote, 'Our other grandson deserves the best rooms.' What else could that possibly mean?" She had no answer. Upstairs, I heard drawers opening and closing, the soft thud of bags being filled. My kids were packing not just clothes but pieces of themselves, their favorite books, their stuffed animals, the little things that made them feel safe. I climbed the stairs to help. Liam had carefully wrapped his art supplies and stacked his books neatly. Chloe was tucking her soccer ball into her duffel bag alongside her clarinet. "You're doing great," I told them softly. "Remember, this isn't about leaving things behind. It's about taking what matters most." They nodded, their faces solemn but determined. When we came back down with the first load, my father was waiting by the door, blocking our path. "Where exactly are you going?" he demanded. "This mysterious house you claim to have rented. Does it even exist?" I met his glare without flinching. "We're staying with a friend until the lease starts next week. You don't have to worry about it." His voice dripped with condescension. "And how exactly do you plan to afford rent on your nurse's salary?" Something inside me snapped. I set down the bags and faced him directly. "Dad, I make $65,000 a year as a pediatric nurse. I have excellent credit, minimal debt, and I've been saving for nearly 2 years. I am more than capable of providing for my children without your help." For the first time, I saw real surprise flicker across his face. He hadn't known. He had never even asked. He had just assumed I was struggling because that fit the narrative he liked to believe. My mother jumped in quickly. "The rental market is impossible right now. How did you even find a place?" "I have friends. Connections," I said simply. "Just because I didn't tell you about my plans doesn't mean I didn't have them." We made trip after trip to the car, loading suitcases, bags, boxes. My parents watched, silent now, the reality sinking in. When the last bag was ready, I walked through the kitchen one final time. My mother was standing at the counter, making coffee with stiff, mechanical movements. "We're heading out," I told her. She turned, tears in her eyes. "I don't understand why you're doing this. We're family." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes, we are. And that's why it hurts so much. Family should make each other feel valued, respected. Liam and Chloe haven't felt that here for a long time." "That's not true," she whispered weakly. I shook my head. "Yesterday, you told them they didn't deserve the same quality of rooms as their cousin. How do you think that made them feel?" She looked away, unable to answer. My father made one last attempt. This is a mistake, Sarah. You're letting your pride get in the way of what's best for your children. For the first time in years, I didn't shrink under his words. I lifted my chin. No, Dad. For the first time, I am putting my children first, above everything, including your approval. Liam and Chloe joined me at the door, their small hands gripping the straps of their bags. They looked back at their grandparents with mixed emotions: love, confusion, sadness. And then, with quiet strength, they stepped outside beside me. As we loaded the last of our things into the car, I heard Chloe whisper, "Mom, it feels weird to leave, but it also feels good." I hugged her tightly. That's because we're choosing ourselves this time, and that's always the right choice. I slid into the driver's seat, glanced once at the house that had been both shelter and prison for nearly 2 years, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw my parents standing in the doorway, watching us leave, and for the first time I didn't feel guilt. I felt free. The night we left, I thought the hardest part was over. But leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. For the first time in years, my children and I felt free. But freedom has a price. And sometimes that price is facing the very people who once held all the power over you and telling them, enough. The first few nights at Nancy's felt surreal. She had set up the guest room with a queen bed for me and 2 air mattresses for Liam and Chloe. She even stocked the fridge with snacks she knew kids loved and brought home ice cream for us to share after dinner. It wasn't glamorous, but it was warm. It was kind. And that was more than enough. That night, as we ate ice cream on the couch, Nancy pulled me aside quietly. "I'm proud of you, Sarah. It takes courage to walk away, especially from family." I let out a shaky breath. I just wish I'd done it sooner, before they hurt my kids like this. She squeezed my hand. "You did it now. That's what matters." Her words stayed with me, because for the first time in years I wasn't doubting myself. I knew I'd made the right choice. The twins adjusted quickly. Liam pulled out his sketchbook, sitting cross-legged on the floor, doodling superheroes and castles. His shoulders looked lighter, like he could finally breathe again. Chloe practiced her clarinet without being shushed, her notes echoing through the house. Nancy clapped after every song, and the way Chloe's eyes lit up, it was a glimpse of the little girl she had been before all this. We weren't home yet, but for the first time I saw my children come alive again. 1 week later, the lease on our rental house started. It was small, 3 bedrooms, a little backyard, and a kitchen with sunlight pouring through the windows. But to us it was a palace. Moving day was chaos, but the good kind. Nancy and a few co-workers helped us carry boxes, assemble furniture, and hang curtains. The twins each picked their bedrooms. Liam chose the smaller one because he wanted the window that overlooked the yard, while Chloe claimed the bigger one for band practice. That night, after pizza boxes were stacked on the counter and the last box had been pushed into a corner, the kids fell asleep in their own rooms for the first time in nearly 2 years. I sat in the living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and cried, not out of sadness but relief. We had made it. But peace didn't last long. The following Monday, just after I dropped the kids off at school, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I froze. My parents stood there. My father's face was stern, my mother's eyes red and tired. "How did you find our address?" I asked cautiously. "Your Aunt Susan told us," my dad admitted. "She thought we should try to reconcile." Reluctantly, I let them in. They sat at my kitchen table, glancing around the modest little house. My mom's nose wrinkled slightly. "It's smaller than I expected," she said. I forced a smile. "It's perfect for the 3 of us." My dad leaned forward, clasping his hands together. "Amanda, this has gone on long enough. We want you to come home." I stared at him, stunned. "Home? Dad, this is our home now. The children need their grandparents," my mom insisted. "And their uncle. And their cousin." I shook my head slowly. "What they need is to be treated with respect. With love. And that wasn't happening in your house." My mom's voice rose. "We've always loved them. How dare you say otherwise?" I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "Love isn't just words, Mom. Love is how you treat people. And for the past year, you've treated my children like they were less than Noah. Like they didn't matter." Silence fell over the room. My parents shifted uncomfortably, but I didn't let it linger. They deserve better. And I will not put them back in a house where they're told they don't deserve the same comfort as their cousin. My father tried again, his tone softening. We didn't realize how it looked. We thought we were just helping Brian and Jessica through a difficult time. I shook my head. Helping them at the expense of my children's well-being isn't helping. It's hurting. And I won't let that happen again. My mom's lip trembled. We didn't mean to hurt them. I swallowed hard. But you did. And until you can treat Liam and Chloe with the respect they deserve, you don't get to be part of their daily lives. The conversation dragged on for nearly an hour. Guilt trips, pleas for family unity, promises they'd do better. But for the first time I didn't fold. I had drawn the line and I wasn't moving it. Finally they stood to leave. At the door my mom looked back at me, her voice small. I hope one day you'll forgive us. I nodded. Forgiveness isn't the issue, Mom. Change is. And then they were gone. When Liam and Chloe came home from school that afternoon, I told them about the visit. Chloe frowned. Are we going back? No, I said firmly. This is our home now. But if Grandma and Grandpa learn to treat you with respect, we might visit one day. Liam tilted his head thoughtfully. So they have to earn it? I smiled. Exactly. The kids exchanged a glance, and for the first time I saw pride in their eyes. Pride in me for standing up, for protecting them. That night as I tucked them into bed, Chloe whispered, Mom, I like it here. I feel like I can breathe. I kissed her forehead, my chest aching with emotion. That's because this house is ours, sweetheart. And no one can take that away from us. As I turned off the light, I realized something. This wasn't just a house. It was a line in the sand. A new chapter. A promise that from here on out, we would only let people into our lives who treated us with the respect we deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Sometimes when you walk away from something toxic, you don't just leave behind the pain. You open the door to a life you didn't even know was possible. That's what happened after we left my parents' house. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was starting to live. The first few weeks in our little rental house felt like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a smoky room. The walls were plain, the furniture mismatched, and half our boxes were still unopened. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that Liam and Chloe had space to be themselves. Every evening the house echoed with sounds I hadn't heard in months. Chloe practicing her clarinet without fear of being told to stop. Liam laughing out loud as he sprawled on the floor, sketching superheroes and dragons. The sounds of kids being kids, free, happy, unashamed. One night as I cooked pasta in our small but bright kitchen, I heard Chloe tell her brother, I like it here. I don't feel like I'm in the way anymore. My throat tightened, tears stinging my eyes. That single sentence made every sacrifice worth it. At work things began to change for me too. My manager pulled me aside after a shift. Sarah, we've noticed how hard you've been working. We'd like to promote you to charge nurse on the pediatric floor. The position came with a significant pay raise and more stable hours. Fewer overnights, more time with my kids. For years I had been running on fumes, juggling survival and responsibility. Now, for the first time, there was stability, security, hope. Meanwhile, word about what happened spread through the extended family. Aunt Susan visited often, bringing cookies for the kids, sitting at our kitchen table to listen to their stories. She asked about Liam's art projects, about Chloe's band recitals, and her interest was genuine. She looked at me one afternoon and said, I don't know how you put up with it as long as you did, but I'm proud of you for leaving. Her words were a bomb. For so long I had questioned myself, wondered if I was imagining the favoritism. But now other people saw it clearly too. Not everyone though. My parents still sent me messages, sometimes angry, sometimes tearful, sometimes pretending nothing had happened. They invited us to Sunday dinners, though I declined at first. I wasn't ready. The wound was still fresh. But over time I agreed to one. I wanted to show them we weren't hiding, that we were thriving without them. When we walked in, the tension was thick. My mother's smile was forced, my father's posture stiff. Brian and Jessica were there too, looking more worn than I'd ever seen them. Without me in the house, they had no one to help with chores, meals, or childcare. My mother, in her 60s, was exhausted from babysitting Noah full-time while Brian worked long hours. Jessica looked frazzled, her patience fraying. The smugness they once carried was gone. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The difference between my happy children and their chaotic household spoke volumes on its own. After dinner, my mom pulled me aside. Her voice was softer than I expected. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, Sarah. I didn't realize how much we were hurting Liam and Chloe." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. For the first time, I saw cracks in her certainty. "What made you realize it?" I asked quietly. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "After you left, nothing was the same. Stephen and Jessica stayed for another month, but without you there, I couldn't keep up. I started to see how much you had been doing, how much I took you for granted." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest I had heard. And for now, that was enough. The biggest change, though, was in Liam and Chloe. Liam's teacher emailed me again, not with concern this time, but with praise. He's back to participating in class, back to sharing his ideas. His creativity is shining again. He even joined an after-school art program, mentored by a teacher who encouraged his talent. For the first time, he was proud of his gift instead of hiding it. Chloe blossomed too. With no one silencing her clarinet, she practiced daily and earned a spot in the school's advanced band. She even talked about trying out for the soccer team in the spring. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "Mom, I feel like I can breathe here." Those words echoed in my chest. Because she was right. We were breathing again, freely, deeply, without fear. And as for Brian and Jessica, the cracks in their perfect picture began to show. My mother mentioned in passing that they were arguing often about childcare, about money, about the renovation that still wasn't finished. Without my silent labor holding their lives together, they were forced to face the reality of parenting and adulthood. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy. Parenting is hard under the best circumstances. But another part of me couldn't ignore the truth. They had leaned on me without appreciation, and now they were reaping the consequences. One evening, as we sat around the dining table in our little rental, Liam looked up from his drawing and asked, "Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa treat us differently than Noah?" I set down my fork, my heart heavy. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people get stuck seeing things a certain way. Grandma and Grandpa have always seen Uncle Brian as special, and when he had Noah, they carried those feelings over to him." Chloe frowned. "But we're their grandkids too." I nodded. "Yes, you are. And they do love you. They just didn't know how to show it equally or fairly." Liam thought for a moment, then asked softly, "Is that why we left?" "Because they weren't fair." I pulled them both close. "We left because everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. And when that wasn't happening, I knew we had to create our own space. A space where we could all thrive." Their faces relaxed, comforted by the truth. And in that moment, I knew. They were beginning to understand not just what had happened, but why. 6 months after that terrible night, our lives looked completely different. Our little rental house was messy and loud and full of love. The fridge was covered in Liam's artwork and Chloe's recital programs. Our weekends were spent at soccer games, art shows, and movie nights on the couch. I was thriving at work, balancing motherhood and career with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. And most importantly, my children were happy. Looking back, I realized something. Walking away from my parents' house hadn't just been about escaping their favoritism. It had been about teaching Liam and Chloe that they mattered, that they had a voice, that they deserved better than scraps. And every laugh, every smile, every breath of relief they took in our new home reminded me that leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning. They say time heals all wounds. I don't know if that's true. Some wounds never fully close. But with time, with distance, you learn to live with them. And sometimes, if you're lucky, those scars remind you not of the pain, but of the strength it took to survive. A full year passed after the night we walked out of my parents' house. 12 months of growth, of challenges, of rebuilding from the ground up. Our little rental, once bare and temporary, had become warm and lived in. The walls, once plain, were now covered with family photos, Chloe's soccer medals, and Liam's framed art pieces. The dining table bore scratches from school projects and family game nights. It wasn't just a house. It was proof of everything we had survived, and everything we were becoming. In the spring, something amazing happened. With my promotion at work, careful budgeting, and help from a first-time homebuyer program, I signed the papers to buy our very own house. A modest 3-bedroom with a fenced backyard, a porch swing, and a big oak tree in the front yard. When I handed the keys to Liam and Chloe, they looked at me like I had just given them the world. "It's ours," Liam asked, his voice full of wonder. I nodded, tears in my eyes. All ours. No one can take it away from us. Chloe ran into the backyard, twirling in the grass. This is home, she shouted, her laughter ringing like music. And in that moment I knew I had kept my promise to them. The kids blossomed in ways I couldn't have imagined. Liam's art was accepted into a local youth exhibit. His drawings praised for their creativity and depth. His teacher told me, he has something special. You should nurture it. Chloe joined the school band and played at her first concert. When she stepped onto that stage, clarinet in hand, her smile wide and fearless, I thought my heart would burst with pride. At home their laughter was constant. The weight that had once dragged them down was gone. They were free. And me? I felt stronger than I ever had. I wasn't just a nurse or a mom trying to survive. I was a provider, a protector, a woman who had faced down her fears and chosen her children above everything else. It wasn't always easy. Money was tight sometimes. There were nights I stayed up late balancing bills. Mornings I dragged myself to work after too little sleep. But every challenge felt worth it because I was doing it for us. For our family. As for my parents, things changed slowly. They began reaching out. Not with demands but with small gestures. Birthday cards for Liam and Chloe. Invitations to dinner, phrased more gently than before. My mom even came to one of Chloe's concerts, sitting quietly in the back, clapping until her hands turned red. It wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard, and sometimes I saw the favoritism slip through in little comments. But there was effort now. Effort I hadn't seen before. And I realized something. I didn't need them to be perfect grandparents. I just needed them to respect my children. If they could do that, then maybe there was a path forward. Brian and Jessica, however, weren't doing as well. Without constant support, the cracks in their marriage widened. My mom confessed one day, they fight all the time now. About money, about childcare. Jessica talks about moving closer to her parents. I didn't feel joy in their struggle, but I did feel clarity. For so long, they had leaned on my family's favoritism, expecting the world to bend for them. And when the foundation cracked, they had nothing solid to stand on. It wasn't my responsibility to fix that. One evening, as the sun set over our new backyard, I sat on the porch swing with Liam and Chloe. They had just finished playing tag, their laughter still echoing in the air. Chloe leaned against me, sweaty and smiling. Mom, do you ever miss living with Grandma and Grandpa? I thought about it. The stability it once offered. The memories from before things soured. I miss who I thought they were, I admitted softly. But I don't miss how they made us feel. Liam tilted his head. I don't either. I like this better. It's just us and it feels safe. I hugged them both tightly. That's all I ever wanted, for you to feel safe and loved and enough. As the sky turned pink and the fireflies began to glow, I felt a deep peace settle over me. This wasn't the life I had planned. Divorce, moving back home, the heartbreak of favoritism. It had all torn me apart once. But in the ashes, I had found something stronger. I had found freedom. I had found my children's laughter again. I had found myself. Family isn't about blood. Family is about who shows up, who respects you, who loves you without conditions. For too long, I let my parents decide my worth, my children's worth. But not anymore. We walked away and we built something better. And now every night when I tuck my kids into bed in a house that is truly ours, I know this truth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave.